What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. Brenden Shaeffer with you, talking about a Cardinals loss on Monday night. They fall to the Cincinnati Reds by a score of 3-1 at Great American Ballpark. Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me as we are recording this episode live in front of a studio audience. Not really, but you guys are out there in YouTube land, so appreciate you for joining me. I'm already seeing some comments here talking about the Samuel chiming in, talking about the intro music and the Down on the Farm spot. I don't know if we'll be able to do those things technology-wise in the middle of the live stream, unfortunately, but most of the time, for folks who listen to the podcast, you know what Samuel is talking about, and so I appreciate you guys for that good feedback. Let's go ahead and get the comments in. As long as everything is sounding good, I'm going to just go ahead and roll, and this is going to be the podcast on Monday night whenever I post this to the other podcast feeds for B-Schaeff Daily. Cardinals lose this one, and it was kind of more of the same in terms of what we've seen from this team offensively on the road this season. Really, in general, on the road, the Cardinals have not been able to do much, and that was true tonight. You got the RBI hit from Nolan Arenado, happened in the first inning. He goes 1-for-4. It's an RBI double, finds a way to score Lars Nootbaar, but other than that, the Cardinals got zilch tonight. Just that one hit, and they were 1-for-6 with runners in scoring position. 5 hits in the entire game, and for those hits to mostly come in the first inning, you just didn't get a whole lot cooking if you're the Cardinals against Nick Martinez, who improves to 1-3 on the season. One of those guys that when you look at the numbers coming into the game, Cardinals should have done more against Nick Martinez, right? We know he's got a good pedigree, has been around the league a long time, but 6 innings, 1 run, and able to scatter 5 hits and a couple of walks. And then the Cardinals just completely hapless against the Cincinnati bullpen. Graham Ashcraft comes in for an inning and strikes out the side, and he's a former starter with the Reds, but is finding a home maybe this year in the bullpen in shorter stints with an 0.71 ERA. Santillan and Emilio Pagan coming on to finish the Cardinals off in this one. And it felt like I put this on Twitter and somebody said, well, that's kind of a kind way of putting it. And I said, well, yeah, I was trying to be kind, but it was like the Cardinal lineup was in cruise control. And I didn't mean that as a compliment. It just seemed as though they were sort of going through the motions after you get an early run and then the Reds take the lead from there. The Cardinals just didn't seem to have that bite to them offensively in the way that you're looking to rally the troops and maybe get something going. The Cardinals at one point, I'm straining to remember which inning it was. Maybe the chat can help me out. Maybe the 5th inning where they had runners on first and second and Mason Wynn bunts and the catcher makes a nice play popping up and making the play at third base to get the lead runner. And then Nootbaar stings one, but it ends up as a double play, 4-6-3, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And so you lose your opportunity, maybe your best chance to plate any additional runs for your offense goes by the wayside there. And it just happens so quickly, right? It just blink of an eye and it's gone. And that was certainly unfortunate for the Cardinals in this one as Damian hops into the super chat. Appreciate that, Damian. He mentions 8 games of 1 or fewer runs. I think that's an important stat. I hadn't looked that up, so credit to Damian for that one. It's one of those deals where when we talk about, and I've mentioned this on previous B-Schaeff Daily podcasts and always get good feedback from the math teachers or the accountants or the folks who have some sort of a math background, mentioning the difference between when we say average, how many runs per game, the difference between the mean, which is the true average, if you score 100 runs in 10 games, 10 runs per game, right? Just simple math, versus the median. I think the median is more interesting for this Cardinals team than the mean, because you can have a game where you score a dozen runs, but how many times do you then offset that with a game like tonight where the offense didn't get it cooking, where we've given all this credit and praise, right, to Brant Brown, and then lo and behold, we have games like this. Now, teams are going to have games, but is it happening too much for the Cardinals? Is it happening too much in particular for the Cardinals on the road? I think is at least a fair question to ask, even if it's not maybe a fair assertion at this point in time, because the Cardinals have, we're still in the month of April for a couple more days here. And so there's a long way to go on the season. But if we're going to praise this Cardinals offense for being a new version of itself this year, right, then I do think when the times are a little bit more rough, the way we're seeing lately, especially when it comes to the road games, but last 2 games, the Cardinals mustered just 1 total run. And you can even go back to the homestand, right? Brewers series, 3 runs, 6 runs, 1 run for an average, a mean of 3.33. That's not enough for sure, but the Cardinals win the series, so you don't totally notice it. You don't totally worry about that. But the median's more interesting to me. If they've had 8 times where they've scored 1 or fewer runs, the median's probably creeping down more toward the 3 or 4 range. I haven't really remembered too many times where they've scored 3. It happened recently on Friday in that win over the Brewers. But that's sort of my point. Like, this is a Cardinals team, I think the way they're constructed, if they're going to have success, you need to probably be in that 4 to 5 run range more often than not. And that's from a median standpoint. That's take away the best outcome and the worst outcome and keep doing that until you get to the middle number. That's your median. The Cardinals need to be, about 5 runs every time when you're looking at a median. And I don't think that's probably been the case this year. Their mean is probably closer to 5 runs. I think it's probably dipped a little bit compared to where it had been after I did this little calculation, whether it was a week ago or whenever that happened. I think that number has probably gone down based on recency. The Cardinals now rank 12th in MLB in runs scored on the season. A lot of different MLB teams having played slightly different numbers of games, so that's not a perfect rating that we're looking at there. But the number of the mean is 4.51 runs per game. Like, it's a solid number. If the Cardinals scored 4.5 runs every game, where you're either getting 4 or 5 runs, I think they'd win more games than what we're seeing, which is you get a 6 spot, you get a 12 here and there, you get an 8 to prop you up. One shutout. Too many of those happening for the Cardinals right now. And I think from a pitching staff perspective, they need a little bit more. They need a little bit more than that on a consistent basis. And you're talking about a ballpark like Great American Small Park, as we call it lovingly here on the show, where you should be able to probably get some offense cooking. The Reds did a little bit against Andre Pallante tonight. He does give up the 1 home run, but you know what? He goes 6 innings. He gives up 3 runs, all of them earned. He scatters a couple of walks. You're going to have those from time to time. Gives up 6 hits. Not altogether a shabby outing by Andre Pallante, but it ends up not being enough because the Cardinals score 1 run. We see O'Brien come in, have some danger that he has to work around. John King ends up with an inning and a third, walks a man, but doesn't allow any hits. Those things are what they are. At the end of the day, though, you can't win very many games scoring 1 run. So that's that by Damien. Relevant, and I do appreciate, Damien, the super chat. Got comments here, but let me know if you've got anything, guys, and I'll just start diving through it, and we'll see where it takes us. Probably won't go super late tonight, considering we're always fighting against the evils that are bad connections, which I'm already dealing with a little bit of that right now. But hopefully for anybody that may miss some of the clarity of the YouTube stream, we will have all of this available the next day on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I will repost some of the keys from this podcast to YouTube as well. So fear not. Okay. Allison saying excited for the live, but bummed about the game. How could the Cardinals get their road games turned back around? Is it a mental adjustment or something more? I think that this is a very obvious question because of the differential between the records. The Cardinals have been really, really sturdy at home this season. 10-5, I believe, is the home record at Busch Stadium. On the road, they're 2-12. It's a drastic difference. I think you would strain to find much of a greater disparity between home and road performance across anybody in MLB. The Rockies are worse on the road. They're 1-14, but they might be 2024 White Sox bad. So that's not exactly what you're aspiring toward if you're the St. Louis Cardinals. The current White Sox aren't very good themselves, 3-13 on the road. But other than that, like, you're the worst in baseball. Other than those couple of teams that we talked about, the Cardinals are down there at 2-12 right now, and it's inexplicable. It seems like it shouldn't be the case because it's not like the home crowds at Busch Stadium get people so riled up, right? The Cardinals fans come out, but we've talked about this as a topic that it's just been a little bit leaner, maybe a lot of bit leaner so far this season than we're used to seeing in terms of the fan attendance at Busch. I do think it gets better as the year goes along because school gets out, summertime, people want to be at the ballpark, whether the team is good, bad, or indifferent. But there's also that aspect of you're definitely seeing year-over-year trends lower this year at Busch Stadium. And yet the Cardinals find their comfort there, right? They're winning a lot of games there. They're playing like a playoff caliber team at Busch, and on the road, they're playing like the Rockies or the White Sox. And it's inexplicable, but it's a question that the media rightfully has to continue asking when this continues to occur. And Oliver Marmol isn't going to like it, but it does need to be asked because it's a glaring disparity. And so when it was asked tonight on the postgame show that I saw for FanDuel Sports Midwest, answer was that it's not something that the guys think about, and we really don't think about it unless you guys are asking about it. So it's just not something that's considered, which, I mean, stands to reason. They probably feel whatever their record is the type of team that they are. And the Cardinals on the season are a 12-17 team. They're 5 games below 500. They're in 4th place of the division, and the Pirates are currently nipping at their heels, which is not what you want if you're the St. Louis Cardinals. But we knew that this was a season where this could happen. Still have a belief that the Cardinals might be able to mount a charge and end up looking better in the standings than they are right now. I'll continue to do the numbers game where you look, what would it be, 12 divided by 29 games played. It's a 413 win percentage. You multiply that by 162. Nobody said there'd be math involved. It's 67. The pace they're on is 67 and 95. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. I'll take the over on that, even knowing that if the Cardinals are out of the race, they're going to be selling at the trade deadline, and that could mean a little bit more of a lean roster from August, September. You also may get some of the younger players called up that could give you a jolt and could give you a boost with their exuberance. So I'll still count on the Cardinals to be a better team than they've been, especially when you're able to cling to the home record versus the road record disparity. They still get to play a lot of those games at home, and if they're able to iron things out on the road, maybe the Cardinals end up looking like a better team than what we have seen so far. That being said, you can't ignore the record. The record is the record, and it's meaningful, and it shows the type of team that you've been on the aggregate and on the whole, and they're 12-17. It's too early in the season to be 5 games below 500, and we've seen April's of seasons past look kind of like this for the Cardinals, unfortunately, and so we'll see how they're able to dig out of it. It's just a matter of losing the way that they are. It feels more, even though like you're a team with a 4.5 runs per game on the mean, feels like you're squandering some starting pitching performances that are really all you could hope for and all you could ask for. Some days it's the bullpen that squanders it. Wasn't the case tonight. The bullpen did a fine job. Some days it's the offense that squanders it. That was the case tonight. The offense didn't do enough to be able to get the Cardinals a 4-3 win or a 5-3 win. You go 9 innings and give up 3 runs in a ballpark like this against a team like this, you're going to take that. And you're going to hope that your offense was able to do something against their pitching staff. Cardinals weren't able to get that done. Terry Francona, good manager, new manager for the Cincinnati Reds. So it's a new factor that you have to think about when you're facing this team. But just unfortunate that the Cardinals see another kind of opportunity like this go by the wayside, where I can't say they played poorly. You know, in terms of the way that they played this game, I don't like the bunt necessarily with runners on first and second and in that portion of the game, the way that Mason Wynn's been swinging the bat. But sometimes there are things that we don't totally know. Was he trying to bunt for a hit? Was he trying to set up a sacrifice to get 2 guys in scoring position and there's nobody out, and so a base hit is going to give the Cardinals a crooked number? There are factors that go into this, and I don't think definitively we could take one moment like that and rail on it, just decide that was, the reason they lost the game. And then Lars Nootbaar hits it hard and just hits it right at somebody, and so the inning ends up ending there a lot more quickly than you would have thought when you get 2 runners on base, first and second, with nobody out. But those are the kinds of moments that happen, and you stack up 2 or 3 of those types of moments, and you lose a game, even if you didn't play particularly poorly in terms of the margins of the game. I want to make sure to shout out the thumbnail image, Jordan Walker, and his fantastic play that he made in the bottom of the 7th inning. That's an amazing play. I mean, we raved about Nolan Arenado the other day with the play that he made, throwing home from the other side of the pitcher's mound. The reason we raved about it is because it was a fantastic Gold Glove caliber play. This from Jordan Walker, not exactly the same, because Arenado's momentum, it's an infield play at the plate, his momentum carrying him out toward the second base or the first base bag, essentially across the back of the pitcher's mound. And so there's differences for sure. But it reminds me in the way of he had to make the throw that he made, or he doesn't get the out at first base. Walker makes the catch, and then an off-balance throw, getting some mustard behind that throw. The Reds couldn't believe what had happened, that they were doubled off of first base like that. It was a truly, truly fantastic play by Jordan Walker. We love to see the strides from Jordan Walker that we're seeing defensively this season. You want to see those carry over to the plate, and he was able to get a base hit tonight. But you're talking about a player with a 208 batting average and a 550 OPS right now. For the Cardinals to get where they want to go, quite simply, Jordan Walker has to do more offensively to match the growth that he has made in the field. Nolan Gorman, he's another one of those guys that we're talking about quite a lot right now because he's getting the runway. In lieu of a guy like Thomas Saggese, who was sent to AAA Memphis today. Jose Barrero coming up for his Cardinal debut the next time that he would appear in a game. That will be his Cardinals debut. And ostensibly, it'll come in this series against the Reds, which is the team that he played for previously. Came up originally as a top 100 prospect and had several years with the Reds. but not too productive offensively. We'll see if the change of scenery can help Jose Barrero, who looked good back in the Grapefruit League, and he's looked good for AAA Memphis this season with a 913 OPS. But you're talking about a guy with Nolan Gorman. He's got to be able to get it going if this Cardinals team is going to look good. There's a world in which this Cardinals team doesn't look particularly good, and that may play out, but then the Cardinals will be able to say, all right, we've seen what we need to see, and we know how to move forward with Nolan Gorman or without him, if that's the way that it should end up beyond the 2025 season. However, tonight, 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts, and so there is frustration in Cardinals land because Cardinals fans want to see the Cardinals win as many games as possible, and right now, I don't know definitively that you can say day in, day out that Nolan Gorman is helping them do that with the plate approach that he's got. Thomas Saggese had an 876 OPS. He had really strong numbers in the limited time that we saw him in St. Louis. But the Cardinals right now are not prepared to give him daily playing opportunity. Whether that's the right decision, the wrong decision, an indifferent decision, it's the reality of the situation. And I, for one, happen to agree with it. I know that it doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface, but we do have to remember that what the Cardinals are trying to do in 2025 is not strictly win games. They'd like to win games. That's certainly a goal of theirs. But what's the primary goal? Find out about these players and see who's part of the future. You can do that in 2025 and still have Thomas Saggese as a player on next year's team, whether that's as a role player, whether that's in a starting capacity, whatever the case might be. That could still take place. There's plenty of room for that because this roster won't look the same next year as what it is this year. But this feels like, what is it, year 4 for Nolan Gorman? Feels like kind of the time to see it, right? And to not have the excuses, to not have the variety of ways that you could look at it and say, well, this is why he didn't thrive previously. He plays a lot, and we're going to find out what he's made of at the big league level. And you know what? If he should then eventually move on beyond 2025 to another organization, and he should find it and become the 40 home run hitter that everybody has thought that raw potential was there for him to be, so be it. You can't then look at it and say, oh, it's Adolis Garcia, it's Randy Arozarena. It's the case that the Cardinals need to find out what they have in this guy and give him the opportunity, right? He was a first-round pick. He was a player that has been hyped up year over year, and then that hype has sort of waned as time has gone on. But I think it's incumbent upon the Cardinals to give him the runway. Nobody likes that word. I think it's reasonable for them to be doing it right now. And might they lose a couple of extra games because of it? Yeah, potentially. If this season ends up going by the wayside, you could see that, yeah, Thomas Saggese, if he was playing the way that he had early on, maybe would be a better option for the daily lineup right now. But because the Cardinals were not prepared from a lineup perspective to give him those looks, might as well be in AAA Memphis where he's able to play every day to continue to develop as a 23-year-old player. You might say, well, Brenden, Jordan Walker is still only 22. He doesn't turn 23 until May. Why is he getting the opportunities when he's actually younger than Saggese? Well, Jordan Walker's going into year 3 as well. He's played a decent amount of time in the big leagues, and he's just got more experience coming out of high school to the St. Louis Cardinals in that first round of the 2020 draft. And we have seen him throughout the professional ranks, and now we're seeing him in his 3rd year of big league baseball. I agree with the St. Louis Cardinals keeping Jordan Walker in there and finding out what he is made of relative to Thomas Saggese. Do I think Saggese has a decent future and could be a player for the Cardinals down the road? Absolutely. And I think you'll see him later on this summer. But right now, with the injuries that they have or don't have, and the players that they do want to fit into the lineup, they haven't been able to figure out a way to get him in there consistently. Oliver Marmol had a quote to the reporters that I saw from Cincinnati earlier today to that exact end, and that's the reason that he's not here at this point, whereas a guy like Barrero, he's maybe more of a bit player, a role player, a utility player down the road, and he's 27 years old, and you might as well see whether he's somebody that makes sense for your roster. There is some raw materials there to work with. You don't have super high hopes that he's going to suddenly blossom into a starting caliber player, but it's at least worthwhile to see what he's made of in the role that he's in. So that's kind of my rant. I know that I have talked about the Saggese stuff in other podcasts, but wanted to make sure that the folks here tonight could hear my thoughts on that. And if you're upset about it, I'm not saying you're wrong. As a Cardinals fan, you're more than entitled to feel the certain way that you feel about the way the Cardinals are handling some things this year. And at the end of the day, it may be to their detriment for the 2025 record, but keep in mind, there are things that they're trying to do to lay the groundwork for next year and beyond. And at this point, you just have to hope they're successful in finding out what they need to find out before Chaim Bloom takes over and ultimately starts to, I think, shake up this roster. This is a 90-loss team in 2025. I think you'll see a drastically different roster next year, even though there's not a lot of moves that would have to be made in terms of beyond the guys that are expiring with their contracts. You could see them depart either in July at the deadline or in the offseason in free agency. But I do think that there will be some moves that are made by Chaim Bloom to put his stamp on the roster sooner rather than later. Nodlin wants to know how the game went. Not well. Didn't go amazing. Pallante had a nice outing, gives you a quality start. Cardinals have had too many times where those quality starts have happened, but they have not been able to either get enough runs to support it get the bullpen to close it out after the fact, or sometimes it's a combination of the two. Tonight, it was just the offense that you're not feeling too good about. Ray mentions that the Reds, outslugged the Cardinals tonight. 3 doubles, a triple, and a home run. Cardinals had 3 doubles. Yeah, the Reds, they out-hit the Cardinals, and they didn't do a ton off Cardinal pitching themselves. I mean, you have 5 extra base hits. You're probably feeling pretty good about that number most nights, I would think. But in this ballpark, maybe it's not normally enough. It was for the Reds tonight because the Cardinals were not able to get over that hump. Charlie says it's the same crap on a different night. And look, when it comes to their road record this year of 2-12, it's hard to totally disagree with that. Like I said, the manager had the assertion that it's not something that they really think about. You would hope that's true because you don't want that to be a self-fulfilling prophecy at a certain point where the Cardinals wrap up a nice homestand and then they get ready to fly out to somewhere, wherever they're going. And the mindset is, oh gosh, here we go again. As long as they're not letting that seep in, I think it is something that they will be able to turn around at a certain point in time. But see all those aspects of the team flowing in accordance with one another is still not something we have seen on the road just yet. Allison wondering how many the Cardinals left on base tonight. I see 3 according to the MLB box score. They didn't, frankly, get a ton on base, and so that's why it was difficult to leave them there. Zen missing Sajacy, and yep, we'll have to see what he ends up doing with AAA. And again, you'll see him up in the big leagues before too long again this season, but it is understandable that he was one of the guys performing. But look, it easily could have gone this way, right? You overexpose a young player a little bit, he starts hot, and then what if he had played 5 games in a row, goes 1 for 17, and next thing you know, his numbers are right down there with everybody else's? That's not fair to put on Sajacy because we don't know that would have happened. But if that had happened, then you wouldn't be feeling the longing for a player like that because he left you wanting more, which is maybe an okay thing. But obviously, when an offense is going the way that it did tonight, you don't want to assume anything about any of the players. When they're performing, you play them until they stop performing is generally the way that you would look at things if you're trying to maximize your chances to win. The Cardinals want to win. Their number one priority is not to maximize the chances to win because right now I would make the argument that most people would say Sajacy gives you a better shot on a given day than Nolan Gorman with the way that his swing is right now. But how many years can you continue to go, well, have him go down to Memphis to work on the swing? You can't. Eventually, you've got to see it from him, even though he still is only 24, 25 years old. Ultimately, you're going to have to see it play out, and the Cardinals can then make some organizational decisions from there. Charlie mentioning that 3 or 4 double plays, always trying to pull the ball. I think the Cardinals have had a better plate approach at times this season under Brant Brown. His philosophy, there are times to hit and there are times to slug, but I know there was some thought that maybe tonight would be the time to slug. Cardinals finding a way to do that, and so if they're trying to pull the ball, that could have been related to the reason that happens. But I don't know. At the end of the day, you do ground into 3 double plays in this game if you're the Cardinals. I know the one for Nootbaar, a couple of the others off the top of my head. I'm not remembering who hit into them, but it wasn't what you wanted. And there are things that are going to happen. Sometimes it's bad luck, but when you only have so few precious opportunities in a game, and then they all seem to end the same way, that can be a frustration that can kind of cause what I termed as like the cruise control of the Cardinals lineup tonight, where it just seemed like not fair to them, and it would never be a fair application to describe it this way, that they're just going through the motions because that means they don't care, they're not trying. That's not what I mean, but like when those at-bats sometimes go quickly and the other pitcher is able to be more efficient because of things like double plays, because of things like check swings that didn't get finished off or light contact that was a result of maybe not putting everything you had into a ball or being able to square one up, that sort of can be the way that we view it from the outside. The implication is never that, they're not trying, they're mailing it in. We can describe how something looks while also understanding contextually that that's not necessarily what's happening there. But optics matter, and how things look, I do think matters at times. So when you have a game like tonight, it does sort of feel that way. It can certainly feel that way. Pallante did a good job, though, as Ace mentioned, and we did talk about the quality start from Pallante. And it was good to see, by the way, because Pallante had a start last week where the Cardinals did win his last start, but it was the first time, I believe, that he didn't get through at least 5 innings. Okay, the second time. He had the same thing happen in the Red Sox series, but he was okay that day. He was certainly better than either Fetty or Michaelis were in that series up in Boston. But for the most part, you've seen some relative consistency from Andre Pallante giving you 6 innings. It's happened in 3 of his 4 outings over the past 3 weeks or so. And he's been able to give the Cardinals a chance to win in virtually all these games. His worst start of the season was a game in which the Cardinals actually did win against Atlanta when he went 4 1/3 and gave up 4 runs prior to this outing. The other one before that was at the Mets the previous Thursday when he had 6 innings, gave up 4 runs, all of those coming in 1 inning, the second inning that night. And so it's one of those cases where, he gave up 4 runs in 6 innings, and that's not a great ERA for that night. But at the same point, he was able to collect himself from a bad second inning and throw scoreless 3, 4, 5, 6. So those are some of the things that certainly do matter. Don't always show up in the box score. But I would say for Pallante, if his ERA is right around what it is right now, 4.13, it's disappointing relative to what he did in the rotation last year when I believe he was around a 3.56. Don't quote me on that number, but he was around 3.5 for the ERA once he joined the rotation in 2024. And now he's a low 4s. He's a 4.13. And that's kind of number 4, number 5 starter caliber on a roster that has the designs of making the postseason. And I would say that the Cardinals right now have a rotation of a lot of those type of guys. I know Eric Fetty in his most recent outing Sunday was not particularly good, and his ERA ballooned as a result of that to 4.68. And suddenly, where we saw the Cardinals rotation looking like that stalwart unit for a while, maybe now it's starting to fade out a little bit where it doesn't have quite the same snap to it as it did before, but you're getting these quality starts still. When Pallante's going 6-3, and you might want more than that out of Sonny Gray, but he went 6-3 his last start. You're getting those kinds of outings that are the blueprint, that they are the recipe and the manuscript to be able to win this team a good amount of games, but the other parts of the team have to do their job, and that's what we've seen go by the wayside. Mostly some pretty good defense, I would say. That's not a huge nitpick of mine. Base running wise, I think they've largely been pretty good, and the ways in which they haven't been, I'm generally okay with it, and Oliver Marmol is as well. Talking about wanting to be aggressive and push the envelope early, find out where those lines are, and then figure out ways to not quite cross them if it's not going to be helpful to your endeavors later on in the season. I think they're doing a fine enough job of that. I don't have huge issues or concerns with the way they're running the bases. They have to hit more consistently. They have to limit the number of games that they just kind of check out in terms of they score 1 run and not the rest of the game. It's not a commentary on the effort, but it is a commentary on the results, and they weren't able to get very much done against, I would say, what was going to be the easiest pitching matchup of the series. Nick Anderson is, Nick Anderson, not Nick Anderson, Cardinal reliever who's been with the AAA Redbirds, but Nick Martinez was the starter today for the Cincinnati Reds, and he came in with an ERA north of 5. So whatever his track record has been over the course of time, teams are getting to him this year. The Cardinals would have liked to have been one of those teams, and they weren't. Tomorrow, you have Brady Singer going Tuesday. He's 4-0 with 3.62. Came over to the Reds in the Jonathan India trade this offseason from Kansas City, and he's been fantastic. He's won several ball games. Andrew Abbott, you'll face on Wednesday. He'll oppose Steven Matz. He's got a 3.6 ERA. He struck out 11 batters a couple of outings ago, so certainly something to watch out for with him. He's a guy that I've always liked and just hasn't been consistently healthy and able to perform the last couple of years, but we saw him in this season so far doing a nice job to earn the numbers that he has. And then you're talking about Hunter Green, who is another stalwart pitcher, I think the best arm in this Cincinnati rotation, and somebody that could be a future Cy Young winner if he really tries to hone it in, a former top pick, and he's 3-2 with a 2.70. So that's a pretty tough stretch for the Cardinals to have to face pitching-wise the rest of this series. Martinez was the one guy who had a lesser ERA, and fortunately the Cardinals were not able to get to him or to the bullpen. Tomorrow, it's Miles Mikolas in the bandbox, and you mentioned Thursday being the matinee getaway day, and we'll see what Wednesday looks like with Matz rejoining the rotation, and that's tricky too. Like, the bullpen's going to be a little bit beleaguered. Having Matz follow Mikolas, to me, I know that there's a lot of ways you could line it up, and there's reasons for everything from this Cardinals coaching staff, but having Matz directly behind Mikolas in this ballpark is risky. Fortunately, you didn't really use up the bullpen very much today with just 2 of the guys having to throw, Riley and John King. So you've saved a lot of those guys' arms for what could be a pretty demanding remainder of the series. But just think about it. We know what the rules are and the guardrails when it comes to Miles Mikolas the 3rd time through the order this season. It's something that Oliver Marmol is desperately trying to avoid, and rightfully so. The numbers dictate that it makes sense to get him out of there while the getting's good. And for the Cardinals to do that, what it means is you'll rely more on your bullpen in those days. Okay, Steven Matz has been fantastic this year, but think about the way that the Cardinals have utilized him. It's been in a relief role, and then he starts on the fly. They're supposed to have him throw kind of in the 60s on pitch count. He pushes back on April the 16th to, I believe, 71, 72 pitches. Fantastic. Gets the Cardinals through 5 innings. He was brilliant and was able to exceed the pitch count as a result of just how darn efficient he was. But then he goes back into the bullpen. He's throwing, a couple of batters here. He's throwing an inning there, 2 3/3 innings over here. And it's a lesser workload. I think he was up to about 45 pitches the other day when he threw 2 2/3, and then his more recent outing was just a blip on the radar. What's the pitch count going to be for Steven Matz, who Ideally, if you've got a guy whose arm's not built up, you build him up, and then he pitches again 5 days later or 6 days later. And if it's a 6-man rotation, and you build him up again, and you build him up until he's able to rejoin your rotation in a legitimate capacity. It kind of feels like right now they're almost just doing Steven Matz a solid to be like, hey, we don't really want you in the rotation, but you pitch too damn well not to put you there. And so we're going to have you in there, but only every 12 days or so. It's a little bit tricky to be able to build momentum that way. Steven Matz, if he's able to give you 5 innings tomorrow on 75 pitches, like what's reasonable after you have, okay, given him that opportunity to stretch his arm out, but then you have to shrink it back down because of the necessity to have him in the bullpen. And that's inherent to the fact that you have Matthew Liberatore in the starting rotation this year, which is a decision that I have agreed with from the St. Louis Cardinals because he's somebody that can be on your team in 2026. It makes sense to have him get this opportunity. And guess what? The team is being rewarded because of Matthew Liberatore's performance. He's been fantastic in the starting role. I believe he's gone 6 innings in every single game that he's pitched this year. Want to make sure to double check that stat. Yeah, that has been the case, and he's got 31 innings pitched through 5 starts this season. So he's averaging a little bit more than 6 innings per start. He's been fantastic, and he's got a 3.19 ERA. It was ostensibly the right decision. But what does it mean? Well, that's a lefty you don't have in your bullpen. JoJo and John King, relatively taxed as lefties of your bullpen early this season. Steven Matz able to pitch in where he can, but he's also got to reserve some bullets for what he's going to need in the rotation. It's just a little bit of a tricky time right now for the Cardinals, and it's one of those things you knock on wood because you want your starting rotation to remain intact, to remain healthy. But the fact that it has against all odds, because every other season that I've covered the St. Louis Cardinals, you have seen at least one starter go down by now. Normally it happens in spring. So the fact that you're still trucking through this thing with your major league starting rotation healthy, that's a surprise. That was the underdog outcome to happen. It was not the favored outcome. It is favored by the Cardinals coaching staff, I'm sure, because they're glad to have these guys. But you also thought things would probably clarify by now. And this has been the rare occasion where that just hasn't happened. Cardinals with an 809 OPS at Busch, 649 on the road. Huge difference in slug home and away, which is bonkers because what do we always talk about with Busch Stadium? It is not a hitter's friendly park. It is a pitcher's friendly park. And yet the Cardinals are doing the opposite. And I saw some commentary. Here was this from Zen asking if they put more effort into home games rather than away games. No, I really don't think that that's the case at all. But they're not finding their confidence in their stride as a lineup. The rhythm of the lineup has not been the same on the road. I don't know why that would be. Again, it's not like they're packing 40,000 into Busch Stadium every night. It's been, we've talked a lot about it being a lackluster home environment. No offense to the fans that are going down there. They're cheering their heads off, I'm sure. It's a lovely ballpark. There's nowhere I'd rather be. I love being down at Busch Stadium when, when I'm working games, I'll go when I can. Love to go with a ticket as a spectator. I love baseball. I love being in the ballpark. The Cardinals seem to love being in that particular ballpark as well because they're playing so well there. Whereas on the road, they just haven't been able to find that consistency. So I don't have anything that I can chalk it up to, and neither does Oliver Marmol, who was asked about it, as I mentioned, and said it's not something we really think about until the question comes up. Zen also mentioning that the bunt was a dumb idea. Pages does not have the speed. It was free out. What Mason's trying to do is bunt a couple of feet beyond where the catcher was, because if he has to take another step, he's not able to go for that out at third base, the aggressive play. And yeah, Pages is a slow runner. You'd probably rather have 6 or 7 different guys on your lineup to do it at that point with. If he's the guy on second base, it's probably a different outcome, but you got to understand your personnel. And I think in that spot, Mason, again, whether that was Mason going on his own or Oliver deciding or somebody from the bench calling for the situation to try and maximize your runners in scoring position with 1 out, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's a huge deal in either direction because players do have the leverage and the latitude to do those sort of things. If they see something, they're empowered to do that. I think it was just a lack of execution. If it's a better bunt, you may end up with the base loaded, nobody out. So it's those slim margins that we talk about. I think those margins are ever so much more slim this season because of the state of this roster. You didn't go out and add a bunch of players in free agency. You didn't go out and add to the roster in terms of payroll. And so you're dancing with who brung you. But at the end of the day, that's not necessarily always a situation that benefits the team when you're looking for that extra punch, that extra thump, right? We know that it could be to the detriment of the 2025 record, but you also get to see what these players are all about, and I think that can be valuable too. Rena has gifted some memberships to the B-Schaeff Daily, Brenden Shaeffer, St. Louis Cardinals writer channel, which I don't really know how that works, but I believe if you're somebody who doesn't have that membership, you can scoop that up and have some of the membership benefits. You get a cool little, I keep trying to say a buzzer. It's not a buzzer. It's a little placard. It's a little badge. That's the word. My son always says the word badge when I come home. I've got my credential around my neck, and he goes, Dada, I want to wear your badge. And so I couldn't think of the word badge. I should have just thought of my son. I would have thought about it for sure. But appreciate that right there, Rena. You're so wonderful to be supporting the channel in that way. And yeah, scoop it up, and maybe some folks that get that gifted membership, if you enjoy it after it expires, consider joining the membership yourself. One thing that Brenden Shaeffer didn't do is remember to put that link into the description of this video, but it'll be in all future videos. Sometimes with the live stream, it's not automatically in there, and I forgot to add it. But lots of ways to find the link to the channel membership if that's something you're interested in doing. And Rena's one of our great members of the Discord group chat that we have throughout the season. A little bit more of an intimate gathering, but some of the biggest supporters of my work over the years are in that chat. And we've become kind of a close-knit little group. So if you're going to join, make sure you're cool, but would love to have you as we just kind of can be a little bit more open in that more private setting. And we trust everybody in there, and we just kind of have conversations throughout the days and weeks. So appreciate that from Rena, and appreciate all you guys for being here in the live chat. Let's scroll back up and see what's going on. We've gone about 36 minutes. We'll aim for 45. I want to try to rip through some of your comments because I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to have these comments. Singer being better than Martinez is an assertion that I would agree with, so we'll see what they're able to do. Tough pitching matchup tomorrow, but we'll see what ends up happening there. And Zen mentioning that the pitching has slowly been coming up and better. However, the decisions from Ollie regarding when to pull is something that Zen is focused on. I actually pretty fundamentally disagree with that. You can look at some spots early in the season where he was a little more aggressive in pulling guys earlier. You have to understand, guys out there, there are things that we don't always know. There are things that don't always get a lot of amplification. They don't get amplified a ton. Certain things like, hey, when it's cold out and a pitcher goes, I'm good after 5. Excuse me. Oliver Marmol's going to go, yeah, you're good after 5. He's going to be in lockstep with those pitchers a lot of the times. But there are players on this Cardinals team in the rotation who are worn down by the end of 2024. And we may not understand that because we just see their stats. We just see them go out, and we have an expectation as fans of here's what it needs to be. We have an expectation sometimes as media of, hey, here's what it needs to be, or we're going to need to be a little bit more critical of that player. When certain guys aren't necessarily going 6-7 every time out, it's a case of Michaelis. Third time through the order, we know that that's a bugaboo for him. You can't blame Oliver Marmol for pulling him early. I wouldn't do anything different myself. There are other players where sometimes we don't know that a guy maybe doesn't have his best stuff, or he woke up with the flu, or he's, early in the season, they're trying to manage his arm because he wore down last year, and they have intimate knowledge of that we don't on the outside. Those are things that happen. I can tell you with certainty that they happen. And so my hesitation when it comes to how could you pull a guy, there's always more to the story. And sometimes that'll come out, and unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't, and it can't for a variety of reasons. The team decides to hold something close to the vest for the benefit of the player, for the benefit of the team, for whatever the case is. Those things happen as well. Just understand that as much as it can seem like a frustration, there's always something we don't know. But more important than that almost is that one of those things we don't know is the outcome if you did it the other way. It's this notion of, I call it hindsight clairvoyant. We're always the clairvoyant that can see the future once it's already happened. It's not as easy to put ourselves as fans or as outsiders into that mind frame of, hey, guess what? This thing happened and it didn't work out. Had they done it the other way, we don't get to know what that outcome would have been, so we almost treat it as though it would have been an infallible outcome and it would have worked out. That's a mistake because that oftentimes is not the case. The reason they might have gone with one decision over another is because statistically it might have been a more beneficial decision. It's not always right. They don't always get them right. There are times where I've disagreed, for sure, with the way Oliver Marmol has approached things. But I think we need to stay away from the black and white and understand that it's usually a gray area. If he makes a decision that I think is a 55-45 or a 60-40 call, and he called the 40 where I would have gone the 60% on the other way, okay, that's fair. And sometimes the 40 might win out. Sometimes the 60 might win out. Statistically, if you ran enough simulations of it, the 60 is going to win out if it's a true 60% decision compared to a 40% outcome. The statistic and the percentages are going to benefit you over the long run. But these you only get to do once in a baseball season. You get to see it again next week when it's a different situation, a little bit different, but maybe it's similar to one you've had in the past, and maybe you make the same decision. Maybe you make a different one. But it's never that the decision is made was 100% the right one or 100% the wrong one. It's always in that gray area. So that's my philosophy. It's not sexy. It's not fun. It's not flamboyant or a way to be able to kind of rail on something that we saw that made us mad. And so a lot of times, I get grief for the way that I describe those situations. I do believe it's grounded in reality, though. So I have to stick to my principles when I talk about certain things. And so as much as I respect people talking about, and we'll talk about decisions, and we'll break them down. And sometimes I might tell you, this was the wrong one, but it was only wrong by a percentage point, right? It wasn't definitive, and we'll never know what the other outcome was because we didn't get a chance to see it play out. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I don't believe Matz is pitching tomorrow unless I've missed something there. At least according to the Cardinals website, they've got Michaelis due for tomorrow and then Matz for later in the week. I could be wrong about that. They could be shifting, and the website, Cardinals.com, might not be up to date on that. Obviously, I'm not in Cincinnati covering the series. I'd be more informed if I was, but I'm not. I don't expect Michaelis to throw only 2 innings. I expect him to throw 5, right? And he can maybe be efficient enough to get you 6, but that's the reason I would say, man, stacking those guys back-to-back in a hitter's park is tough because Miles might only throw 5. He might be throwing well and throw 5. And then Matt's the next day, 5 might be the max if they're going to max him out at 75, 80 pitches because he's not been built up. You're asking a lot. I thought Matz was brilliant to throw 5 innings on April the 16th because he was only supposed to throw about 60 pitches. So that's what's a little bit tricky there. Samuel says we'll take 3 good ones per 1 bad one from Miles. You'd like that, and I know that was kind of a joke comment. You'd like that percentage to be closer to like 5 out of 6, where he goes 5 times, 5 innings, 6 innings, 2 runs, 3 runs, gives you a chance every single time, close to equality. And then maybe the 6th time he blows up. From Fetty, that's almost kind of what you've been getting this year. He had his blow-up one, unfortunately, on Sunday. We're talking a lot about Michaelis. People wanting to know. I saw the comment, but I don't have it pulled up here on the screen, asking about his leash. I think his leash is an interesting question. If he has more blow-up games, then, yeah, it becomes a conversation topic again. He's not been blowing up, though, recently. He's been doing a pretty good job, and so he's allowed another rough one if one should come to pass. But as you get deeper into the summer, he gets closer then to free agency, and we get closer to knowing, is this Cardinals team actually long for the playoff push? And if they're not, eventually you say, all right, we need to look at Michael McGreevy. We have to shake Miles' hand and tell him he's on his way. And I'm not saying that he's performing right now in a way that dictates they should do that. But by the end of it, it may be that that's necessary. You're talking about the Ollie liking the outing of 4 2/3. Well, he took him out because it was one more out that John King was able to get, and that was the spot, Samuel, where, yeah, you could tell him he gets his flowers for going 5. It's not worth it to the Cardinals to have him go 5 in that spot if it's third time through the order and he was starting to wear down. They've got the StatCast data. They've got better than StatCast data. I mean, they've got the data to know what's going on, and so if they're seeing his pitches tire out, as they tend to, third time through, I think, in my opinion, it makes sense to make that move. So that 4 2/3 with 2 runs, Ollie liked it. I liked it too, because it kept the Cardinals in the ballgame. It's not heroism. It's 6th starter, 5th starter type of stuff, but that's what Miles is on this team. Space wants to see Wynn and Newt steal more bases, and I agree. I want to see them all run. Other than Victor, they haven't had a ton of running, but that's actually not true. Sporadically, you'll see it uptick in a series. When they played Yadier Diaz, I believe, with the Astros, everybody was running. Burley, Nolan, everybody. But against other catchers, you don't see it as much. William Contreras is back there, best arm in the league, only Victor, right? That's kind of the way that tends to go. If you think Miles is doing enough, learn ball. Look, I mean, I hate that every podcast kind of turns into the litigate the Miles thing again. He had one dog bleep outing. He was terrible in Boston against the Red Sox. Other than that, 5 1/3, 2 runs. Does that give the Cardinals a chance to win? Any team. Don't even isolate it to the Cardinals. Does 5 1/3 and 2 runs give a team a chance to win in MLB? I'm going to say it does. 5 innings, 3 runs. Give a team a chance? I'm going to say it does. 4 2/3, 2 runs. Give a team a chance? Sure does. 6 innings, no runs? Absolutely does. Miles is 4 for 5. He's batting .800. Not for like elite starts, not for like winning a Cy Young, but that's not his role at this stage in his career. He's the number 5. That's how you view him, in my opinion. Now, does that mean you need more out of Fetty than a 4.68 ERA? Because that's not very good if Fetty's your number 4. He's supposed to be your number 2. Yeah, that's becoming a concern, and we'll continue to look at that. He's walked more guys than he needs to. They're working through it and going to try to see what they can get out of him. Ideally, you can get him back to where he has been at times in the past, so he can be one of your better starters in the rotation. But time's going to tell on that. Liberatore has gained expectations. I think Sonny's been about what you expect, maybe a little bit lower you'd like his ERA to be. Pallante has been about what you'd expect. So you're able to kind of get by with it. If this Cardinals team had the consistency of the run scoring and the bullpen that it had last year, they'd be at 500 or above right now. It's not the rotation that I would hark on too much. So I'm going to skip over some of those comments as I try to get to some of the new folks who I haven't read yet. We may need a new manager after the season. Ollie may lose his mind with this team. Yeah, not because they want to get rid of him, but because he loses his mind. I think it would be a frustrating team to manage the way that it's performing right now. Folks know my thoughts about Oliver Marmol. I think he does a very good job, and at times you're going to look like a better manager when you're winning more games because you have better talent. I think the Cardinals have talent. I don't think that they are fully constructed with the eye on making sure winning was the number one priority from a roster standpoint and a front office standpoint. That being said, I think the roster is actually in a much better shape than it was last year from a bench perspective. You've got a much more useful bench. Now, they're kind of deciding not to use the bench as much as we saw in the first couple of weeks of the season. Like, season started, and bang, you had Ciani coming in late, you had guys pinch hitting, you had different things happening, and everybody was being utilized. They're kind of playing more of that runway game right now, and that's probably coming from some internal conversations with the front office. And, they're organizationally looking toward different players to be able to get that jolt and find out what they're made of. We'll see what it's costing them. Joseph mentioning it seems like Burleson's on his way out. I don't think he's on his way out. He's got plenty of team control remaining, but he's on his way out of the daily lineup right now because they're prioritizing guys like Gorman. How long they stick with that, I think, will ebb and flow for various seasons. And again, when it comes to the run scored per innings pitched for Michaelis, that's not the way to look at it. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it's not. If the guy's giving you a chance to win in 4 out of 5, but he gave up 100 runs in one game, does it mean he was useless in the other 4? No, it means he literally was the single-handed reason that y'all lost the game once. But the other 4 times, he kept you in it. So that's why I just can't look at the raw numbers. I think you got to break it down. I think context matters. I really do. You do need another lefty in the pen. King and Romero have not been great. You're going to have to find their way through it because there's not another lefty in the organization. I mean, they just don't have them. Not from a bullpen standpoint. You got guys like Jerpy, he's hurt. Quinn Matthews is hurt, but they're starters anyway. Who's the lefty that's coming in to save this? Nobody. Steven Matz, if he ends up out of the rotation, is the answer. But that's hardly fair to him in a free agent year where he probably wants to be starting, right? And he's been a good teammate about it. But I think he deserves a chance to start with the stuff that he has because, frankly, he can make more money as a starter. Best case scenario for Matz might be the Cardinals actually not being that good and him looking pretty good and being able to be traded to a rotation where he can go every 5th day and earn himself another contract after this season. It's not impossible that can happen. Going out and getting guys like Andrew Heaney doesn't make any sense to me. No, they've got starting pitching. They've got the starting pitching that they need. They don't have the depth behind it, and so that's why a guy like Michaelis has a little bit less of a daily, weekly concern on his head. Where who are they bringing up other than McGreevy, who deserves to be here already, and he will be soon. Other than that, you're really looking at all the guys that you thought would be ready to come up, and they're all hurt. Graceffo would maybe be an example of somebody who he threw a pretty good start his last time in Memphis, last I saw. But otherwise, the guys that you were hoping to be, Quinn Matthews and Tink Hence eventually was supposed to be on the way, and different guys that have just been injured, it's not been pretty. And so for that reason, you've got a little bit more of a leash because you don't want to then say, hey, pitcher that's given us a chance in 4 out of 5 games, get out of here. We don't want you. It's April, but we're good. We got McGreevy coming. Okay. But then suddenly when you have an injury, what do? There's nobody coming after that. So Michaelis, he's going to continue to pitch for this team. I know that doesn't fit into the transition year narrative. That's a front office question, though. That ain't a Brenden Shaeffer question, which again, in fairness to Mo, you can look at this and say, well, we thought Tink Hence would come up and make starts. We thought Quinn Matthews would come up and make starts. They're all hurt. It has been brutal from that group of pitchers that even Jerpy probably would have seen the big leagues this year later on in the season. And obviously that's not coming because he's hurt. Comment about a bad slide by Pajes. I'm not going to focus too much on that. Let's see this comment. I feel like this team had someone like a Holiday and some middle relief pitchers would be a playoff contender. Yeah, so that was the point I was going to make. I think the roster's in a better shape this year than it is last year. What's the difference, though? The bullpen especially has been the difference, where their middle relief guys have not performed. And last year, JoJo and Kittredge were nails, obviously setting up Helsley. And Helsley's down compared to last year. We haven't seen much of him, but I would say not quite as effective. A lot of it was riding the rail for him, though, last year, too, where it was just he was kind of flying by the seat of his pants and getting through it a lot of the times. when he was kind of searching for command at various times there. And the situation was that excuse me, I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. That last year you had those middle relievers and those late relievers, those seventh, eighth inning guys, to be able to get you through. And the Cardinals won a lot of close games as a result of that. Andrew Heaney is pitching very well for the Pirates. Cardinals aren't making buy moves. I don't really understand the Heaney thing. Yeah, he's been great. He's been better than Michaelis. It's irrelevant, though. The Cardinals aren't buyers right now. They're 12 and 17. Bill, J.J. Weatherholt's number one fan, will be here in 26, and I agree with that, actually. Maybe not to start the season, but I do think we're going to end up seeing him. Because the fact that they started him in Double-A this year and he immediately has thrived, we could see him in Triple-A before the All-Star break, which just means he's a step away. Yeah, he's on pace to be on the team next year in some form or fashion. Jack appreciates the content, and I appreciate him being here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, guys, or if you haven't done this and you have the Spotify app on your phone, what I'd love to see you do is follow the podcast on Spotify and leave a 5-star review on B-Schaeff Daily. It's my first initial and then a dash and then Schaeff, Schaeff Daily. That's the podcast you're listening to right now. If you go on Spotify, leave me a 5-star review. It looks good. And I always tell people, like, different than YouTube, you can listen on Spotify. A lot of my podcasts are on video anyway. And so you can listen and you can actually like close your phone and save battery and listen that way on Spotify. Works just as well. So different strokes for different folks. Brenden, what I mean is a lot of the decisions don't tend to make sense to me. I'm glad that makes sense to you. Well, and Zen, that's why I'm here. I try to filter some of those things that when it makes sense to me, I tell you why, and hopefully maybe then you learn it and it makes sense to you too. Or you still disagree with me, but at least we've all had a reasonable conversation about it, and we didn't make it personal and nobody got mad, right? Sometimes I'll tell you I didn't agree with Oliver Marmol. I was talking about the fact that it was a massive mistake. I rarely say that, but it was a big mistake by whoever was responsible for not sending Ryan Fernandez down Sunday night before the Atlanta series. It cost him a game in that Atlanta series, in my opinion. Frankly, after they didn't send him down, I thought they were going to be stubborn and keep him for the Brewers series, and that actually might have been an okay thing. But now we're seeing Riley O'Brien get a chance, and he's been okay. I don't know if he's going to ever rise to the level of reliability that Fernandez had last year. And I understand why Oliver Marmol would want to keep Fernandez and why the Cardinals would want to try to see it through with him. But it was clear to everybody else that he needed a stint in Memphis. Then you can bring him back in 15 days and have him again if he's able to work things out. But yeah, I'll tell you when I disagree, but it's not always that I'm going to. I'm going to try to be legitimate and going to be straightforward with how I view things. Any lefties out there to replace Romero? Nope. But I do think you'll see a better version of JoJo. He's been lights out before. I think he'll get there again. Velo was up in the game that he pitched on Sunday, so they're hoping to be able to get him back to be where he needs to be. Ray said, and I agree with this, you can almost guarantee if the Cardinals DFA Michaelis, one or two starters will get injured with 5 to 10 days. 100%. That's the way that it goes. Memphis has to have the starters healthy before you can talk about dropping Michaelis. Yeah, McGreevy's going to come. Guys, over under 14 and a half big league starts for McGreevy this year, I'll take the over. I think he'll be here the full second half, basically, if he's healthy. I just think the fact that he's not here right now, they're kind of still wading through that first month of the season jitters when it comes to, okay, we haven't lost anybody to injury yet, but we've seen what happens in previous years where we do, and they're just trying to figure out what that looks like. Zen wants Leahy to have a longer leash. He only gets to go one full inning usually. Maybe we let him go 2. The reason you can't let him go 2 is because he pitches every damn day. Kyle every day he's got to be available when they need somebody in the 7th or 8th inning. And so that's why I don't think it makes as much sense to use him for 2 innings, because a lot of the time that's just going to give you a chance to win one game, and you're still going to need Helsley to close it out anyway. They've found Leahy to have a rubber arm, and so he's been used most of the days, which is kind of cool. Did Nootbaar get another leadoff walk tonight? Allison mentioning that she missed the first inning of the game. The reason that this is a relevant conversation is because he set the record for the most leadoff walks to lead off a game in the month of April with 9. That happened on the previous homestand at Busch Stadium. No, he did not. He led off with a double, and then Nolan Arenado ended up driving him in from third base after a ground out. So, which everybody's mentioning in the comments, double off the wall, 100%. Talking some Bryson Motts. Yeah, he's far away from the majors as well. There is a high schooler in Central Illinois throwing 102 miles per hour left-handed. I do believe he's draft eligible. Maybe the Cardinals want to take a flyer on him. We'll see. 6 pitcher that is established, just not an innings eater, but reliable with no real injury. That's great, Zen. I'm just telling you, that's not the version of the Cardinals you're going to get this year. They're not trying to add to like gain 2% to their rotation. They're not making trades like a buyer. That's not the part of the year that we're in, or the season that we're in at all. But Zen is cool, and he says to subscribe, and he says I'm cool. So it is some good math if you want to subscribe. Would appreciate that. Do I see Leahy as a closer next year? No, I actually see him in next year's rotation. I predicted, I'll call it now. Kyle Leahy will be in the starting five to begin 2026 for the St. Louis Cardinals. For the 35 of you still listening on the live stream, that's a little nugget of a prediction that I haven't made anywhere else. I've talked about the possibility. I think he'll win a job because when you look at who's going to be gone, Michaelis, Matz, Fetty, maybe Sonny Gray. Let's say they lose 90 this year, and Sonny says, I wanted to see this through with the Cardinals. I didn't want to bail after 1 year, kind of like Wilson Contreras said, I didn't want to bail on this team. He wanted to see those relationships through, did Sonny Gray. But if they lose 90 and he's going into the final year of a deal, I could see Sonny Gray going, all right, you can trade me to these 5 teams, and the Cardinals find one for him. So you're talking about maybe 4 of the 5/6 that we're talking about this year being gone. Liberatore, Pallante, by next year, hopefully Quinn Matthews healthy, ready to go. McGreevy, hopefully healthy, ready to go. We'll see about like a guy like Graceffo. Could he work his way in? We'll see about some of the other prospects coming up, if they can work their way in. Tink Hence, we'll see. I'm a skeptic on him as a future starter at this point with all the injuries he has had. Kyle Leahy has a 5-6 pitch mix that he can use in just about any situation. Could be very beneficial to see him in a starter role. So that's my prediction, Bill. I think he'll be in the rotation next year. As Ray mentioned, he agrees with that. Did I hear Donovan close to breaking the record for April? If he is, I don't know what it is, and I've ended up going for an hour, so I'll try to find out more about that for tomorrow's Zen. That, though, is going to do it for this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. I appreciate you guys so much for listening. Subscribe before you get out of here. Consider the channel membership. If you have a business and want to sponsor these bad boys, let me know. I'm at B-Schaefer12 on Twitter. You can always direct message me. I do check the other folder these days, so I'll try to make sure to check it if you DM me. Just let me know. We'll make it happen. Any questions you've got, appreciate you. Samuel, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next. Allison, appreciate you, one of our great supporters. We'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.